In Washington, D.C., power isn't about position, it's about perception. Dr. Javon Washington, Pentagon Intelligence Director, the architect of America's most classified defense systems. Senator Tom Whitfield never bothered to learn who he was dealing with. Big mistake. When a racist confrontation at a town hall meeting explodes on national television, the senator publicly humiliates the wrong man. As a critical national security crisis unfolds, watch as the President of the United States calls for Director Washington by name, revealing his true identity to a stunned Senator Whitfield and millions of viewers. The technologies Whitfield tried to defund are now the only thing standing between America and potential conflict. Witness the dramatic fall of a powerful senator and the vindication of the brilliant mind he dismissed because of the color of his skin. Would you have the strength to maintain your dignity in the face of such blatant discrimination? Comment below with how you would handle being in Dr. Washington's position. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served. Dr. Javon Washington adjusted his tie as he waited in line to enter the West Virginia Convention Center. The televised town hall with Senator Tom Whitfield was about to begin, and despite his reservations, Javon felt compelled to attend. As director of the Pentagon's Classified Strategic Intelligence Division, he rarely appeared at public events. His position required discretion. Tonight, however, was different. At 52, Javon had spent his life balancing his brilliant military career with the need for a low profile. His Georgetown townhouse contained more classified information than most military bases, yet he drove a modest sedan and wore off-the-rack suits to maintain his cover. Only the president, joint chiefs, and a handful of top officials knew that the unassuming man controlled an $80 billion budget and commanded a team of the nation's most elite intelligence officers. "ID, sir," the security guard asked, barely looking up. Javon handed over his civilian ID, not the classified Pentagon credentials hidden in his wallet's secret compartment. The guard waved him through with barely a glance. The convention center hummed with anticipation. CNN cameras swept across the crowd while production assistants directed attendees to their seats. Senator Whitfield's town halls had become infamous for their confrontational nature, especially when discussing defense spending, Javon's area of expertise. "You sure you want to be here?" James Turner, Javon's longtime friend and former Marine Corps buddy, whispered as Javon took a seat beside him. James was one of the few people who knew Javon's real position. "Whitfield's been on a tear lately about unqualified diversity hires in government." "That's precisely why I'm here," Javon replied quietly. "His legislation would cut funding to some of our most critical intelligence operations. Someone needs to challenge his assumptions." On stage, Senator Whitfield's staff arranged the podium. At 63, Whitfield embodied old guard politics, silver-haired, tall, and perpetually tanned. His campaign ads featured him hunting, holding the Constitution, and standing before military aircraft. What they didn't show was his voting record of consistently blocking qualified minority candidates from key defense positions. "Remember, keep your cool," James cautioned. "Your regular persona, not the Pentagon director." Javon nodded. For 15 years, he'd maintained this double life. In meetings with foreign dignitaries and military commanders, he commanded absolute respect. In public, he was just another black professional who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. The lights dimmed and the CNN moderator approached the microphone. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's town hall with Senator Tom Whitfield, chairman of the Senate Defense Committee. Tonight's topic: America's military readiness, priorities, and challenges." The audience applauded as Senator Whitfield strode onto the stage, waving confidently. His campaign staff had strategically placed supporters throughout the venue, their enthusiasm creating the impression of widespread support. Thank you," Whitfield said, adjusting his American flag pin. "I'm here tonight because I believe in strength through capability, not through diversity quotas and social experiments in our military. Our enemies fear strength, not inclusivity programs." Several audience members clapped loudly while others shifted uncomfortably. Javon remained expressionless, methodically taking notes on his tablet. His analytical mind was already cataloging the factual errors in Whitfield's opening statement. The moderator explained the format. The senator would take questions from the audience, with each person limited to 60 seconds. Microphone-wielding assistants began moving through the crowd. Javon raised his hand and, to his surprise, was selected early. A production assistant handed him a microphone. "Senator Whitfield," Javon began, his voice measured and calm despite the pounding in his chest. "Your proposed defense bill cuts funding to intelligence-gathering operations by 22% while increasing conventional weapons systems by 30%. Given that 4 major military conflicts in the past decade were averted through intelligence rather than weaponry, could you explain the strategic rationale behind this reallocation?" Senator Whitfield squinted, clearly not expecting such a specific question. He leaned into his microphone, eyes narrowing as he looked at Javon. Well, looks like someone's been reading some liberal think tank reports, Whitfield said, triggering laughter from his supporters. Let me educate you on something, sir. Real security comes from weapons our enemies can see, not from paperwork and computers. The dismissive tone was familiar to Javon. He'd encountered it throughout his career, particularly from men like Whitfield who assumed his race limited his expertise. But tonight the stakes were too high to remain silent. The data actually suggests, Javon began before Whitfield cut him off. Son, I've been on the defense committee for 18 years. What exactly qualifies you to question my judgment on military matters? Whitfield's voice had taken on an edge that the cameras caught perfectly, the dismissive tone he reserved for those he considered beneath him. The audience tensed. The real confrontation was about to begin. Senator Whitfield's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward on his podium. The television cameras panned between his imposing figure and Javon, capturing the tension building in the convention center. I asked you a question, Whitfield pressed, his voice carrying an unmistakable edge. What qualifies you to challenge my expertise on national defense matters? Javon remained composed, despite the heat rising in his face. Years of Pentagon briefings had taught him to maintain his calm under pressure. I'm a concerned citizen with a background in defense analytics, Senator. The numbers in your proposal don't align with documented threat assessments. The senator's smile didn't reach his eyes. Defense analytics, let me guess, some online course, or perhaps you read an article. Several audience members chuckled, emboldening Whitfield. The complex realities of national security aren't learned from YouTube videos, sir. The CNN moderator attempted to intervene. Perhaps we should move to another question. No, Whitfield waved dismissively. I think it's important we address this misunderstanding. He turned back to Javon. Which defense analytics firm employs you? I know most of them. I'm not at liberty to discuss my specific employer, Javon answered truthfully. Whitfield's eyebrows shot up dramatically. Not at liberty? Well, folks, it seems we have a secret agent in our midst. More laughter rippled through his supporters. Or perhaps you're simply avoiding admitting you lack credentials entirely. James shifted uncomfortably beside Javon, whispering, Don't take the bait. The senator continued, his voice dripping with condescension. The problem with our defense establishment today is precisely this: unqualified individuals hiding behind vague credentials, demanding equal standing with those who have earned their positions through decades of service. Javon felt his phone vibrate in his pocket, likely a secure message from the Pentagon. He ignored it, focusing instead on Whitfield's increasingly hostile rhetoric. Security personnel, Whitfield called, motioning to the uniformed guards at the perimeter. Would you please check this gentleman's credentials? I believe we have a right to know who's questioning national security policy at a public forum. Two security guards approached Javon's seat. The audience fell silent and the CNN cameras zoomed in. This unexpected confrontation was exactly the kind of drama that boosted ratings. Senator, the moderator interjected, this is highly irregular. What's irregular is allowing unvetted individuals to spread misinformation about critical defense matters, Whitfield countered. In these dangerous times, we must know who's undermining our security posture. The security guards hesitated beside Javon, clearly uncomfortable with their assignment. One of them, a veteran judging by his bearing, seemed particularly reluctant. Javon stood slowly, his 6'2" frame commanding attention. Senator Whitfield, questioning your budget priorities is not undermining national security, it's the essence of democratic oversight. The First Amendment protects my right to question elected officials without revealing my identity. The audience murmured in agreement. Even some of Whitfield's supporters looked uneasy with this turn of events. Whitfield's face flushed with anger. When it comes to national security, certain standards must be upheld. If you were qualified to speak on these matters, you wouldn't hide behind anonymity. Javon's phone vibrated again, more insistently this time. Multiple messages. Something was happening at the Pentagon. Sir, I need to see some identification, one guard finally said, though his tone suggested he was following orders rather than personal conviction. James stood beside his friend. This is ridiculous. He asked a legitimate policy question. Whitfield seized on this intervention. And who might you be? Another defense analyst without verifiable credentials. Marine Corps retired, James replied sharply. 23 years of service. The senator paused, recalculating. Attacking a veteran wouldn't play well, especially in a state with high military enlistment. Thank you for your service, Whitfield said smoothly before pivoting back to Javon. But your friend still needs to identify himself if he wants to challenge national security positions at a public forum. Javon decided to defuse the situation before it escalated further. He reached for his civilian wallet, not the compartment containing his classified credentials, and handed his driver's license to the guard. Dr. Javon Washington, the guard read aloud before returning the ID. Doctor? Whitfield repeated, his tone mockingly incredulous. Of what exactly? African American studies, gender theory, a collective gasp rose from the audience. The racial undertone was unmistakable. The CNN moderator stepped forward. Senator, I don't think. I have a PhD in strategic security studies from the National Defense University, Javon stated calmly, though his jaw had tightened, and a master's in quantum computing from MIT. Whitfield looked momentarily thrown but recovered quickly. Impressive credentials on paper. I'm sure they helped fulfill some quota, but real-world experience is what matters in defense planning. Javon's phone buzzed a third time. 3 consecutive alerts meant only one thing, level 1 security situation. He needed to respond. I believe I've made my point about your proposed budget allocations, Senator, Javon said, starting to move toward the exit. The audience can judge the merits of our exchange. Running away when challenged, typical of your kind, Whitfield muttered, not quite under his breath. Several audience members heard it clearly, including those nearest to the live microphones. Javon stopped cold. The slur hung in the air, captured by CNN's audio feed. The moderator's eyes widened in alarm. My kind Senator, Javon turned back slowly. Would you care to elaborate on exactly what kind you're referring to? The convention center fell silent. Senator Whitfield's racial innuendo had crossed a line, and even his staunchest supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The CNN producer was frantically signaling to the moderator, who looked equally distressed by the turn of events. I was referring to academics without practical experience, Whitfield stammered, recognizing his mistake too late. Nothing more. Javon's phone vibrated continuously now. Whatever was happening at the Pentagon couldn't wait. He needed to extract himself from this situation without compromising his cover, but Whitfield's comment demanded a response. I believe my credentials and questions stand on their merit, regardless of your assumptions about me, Javon said evenly. Now if you'll excuse me, I have an urgent matter to attend to. Convenient timing, Whitfield recovered, his confidence returning. When challenged, you suddenly have somewhere important to be. I suppose your defense analytics can't wait. As Javon moved toward the exit with James following closely, the senator called out, Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when we let diversity hires into sensitive positions. They can't handle substantive debate about the security issues facing real Americans. The moderator finally intervened. Senator, we need to move on to the next question. But Whitfield wasn't finished. No, this is important. This man questioned my judgment on national security, a field I've dedicated my life to, then retreats when asked to defend his position. This is the problem with our current approach to national defense. Javon had reached the exit when the convention center doors burst open. 2 men in dark suits entered, scanning the room until they spotted him. Secret Service. Their presence meant only one thing, a direct presidential order. Dr. Washington, the lead agent called, his voice carrying across the now silent hall. You're needed immediately, sir. Every head turned. The CNN cameras swiveled to capture this unexpected development. Senator Whitfield froze mid-sentence, confusion crossing his face. Who are these men? This is a private town hall. The Secret Service agents reached Javon, their demeanor respectful but urgent. Sir, the Eagle requests your presence. Code Alpha 7. Eagle, the Secret Service designation for the president. Code Alpha 7 meant a critical national security threat. The CNN moderator appeared completely bewildered. I'm sorry, but who exactly is requesting Dr. Washington? Before the agent could answer, Javon's secure phone rang, not the standard vibration of a text message. Only 3 people had this direct number. He answered, activating the encrypted connection. Washington, he said tersely. The convention center's audio system, still active from his earlier question, picked up his voice. And then, to everyone's shock, the president's voice emerged clearly through the phone's speaker, loud enough for the nearby microphones to capture. Javon, I need you at the Situation Room immediately. The Chinese Maritime Initiative has gone hot and we need your QRF deployment authorization. How quickly can you get to the helicopter? The audience gasped collectively. Senator Whitfield's jaw went slack. 5 minutes, Mr. President, Javon replied professionally, aware that the entire room could hear the exchange. I'm at the Whitfield Town Hall in Charleston. Whitfield? The president's tone shifted. Isn't he the one trying to gut your division's funding? Ironic timing. We'll discuss that later. The Joint Chiefs are waiting. Yes, sir, en route now. Javon ended the call and turned to face the stunned audience. Senator Whitfield stood frozen at his podium, his face ashen. The CNN cameras captured everything. The Secret Service agents flanking Javon, the shocked expressions throughout the hall, and most importantly, the complete transformation in how everyone now viewed the man Whitfield had just attempted to humiliate. Senator, Javon said calmly, I'd be happy to continue our discussion about intelligence funding after this crisis is resolved, perhaps with the Joint Chiefs present to provide their perspective as well. The convention center erupted in murmurs. The CNN producer was frantically speaking into her headset. This unexpected drama was broadcasting live to millions of Americans. The lead Secret Service agent stepped forward. "We need to clear a path to the exit. Dr. Washington has Level 1 priority clearance." "Level 1?" Whitfield repeated weakly, finally finding his voice. "Who exactly are you?" Javon paused, weighing how much to reveal given the national security implications. The second Secret Service agent made the decision for him. "Sir, we need to move. The presidential helicopter is inbound to the landing zone." The moderator approached, microphone in hand. "Dr. Washington, for our viewers just joining us, could you please clarify your position?" Before Javon could respond, his secure tablet lit up with an incoming video call from the Pentagon. The Deputy Secretary of Defense appeared on screen, visible to those nearby. "Director Washington, the Joint Chiefs are assembled. We need your go code for the Sentinel Protocol." The audio carried throughout the convention center. "Director Washington, Sentinel Protocol," words that meant nothing to most citizens but everything in defense circles. Senator Whitfield gripped his podium, visibly shaken. The man he had just racially insulted and tried to have removed was not just any defense analyst. He was clearly someone with authority that far exceeded his own. "I'll provide authentication en route," Javon told the deputy secretary. "Preliminary authorization, Washington, Javon T., Pentagon Strategic Command, authorization code Sierra Tango 94 Delta." The deputy secretary nodded. "Confirmed, Director, helicopter ETA 3 minutes." As Javon turned to leave with his Secret Service escort, the audience spontaneously began to stand, not in protest but in respect. The power dynamic had shifted completely in a matter of minutes. James leaned close to his friend. "So much for your cover, Director." Javon nodded grimly. "Some things are more important than anonymity." As they reached the exit, he glanced back at Senator Whitfield, who remained frozen at his podium, watching his political future crumble in real time on national television. The heavy thrum of helicopter blades cut through the evening air as Javon and his security detail exited the convention center. Outside, a sleek Black Hawk helicopter descended onto the nearby parking lot, its rotors whipping up dust and debris. The presidential seal gleamed on its side, visible to everyone, including the CNN camera crew that had rushed outside to capture the moment. Inside the convention hall, chaos had erupted. The moderator struggled to regain control as audience members stood, phones raised, recording every second of the unprecedented scene. Senator Whitfield remained at his podium, a political calculation visibly playing out across his features as he processed what had just occurred. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," the moderator pleaded. "Let's continue with our scheduled." "I need to address what just happened," Whitfield interrupted, his political instincts finally kicking in. "It appears we've witnessed something extraordinary tonight." The audience quieted, attention shifting back to the senator who now attempted to reframe the narrative. "What you just saw demonstrates why my security concerns are valid," Whitfield said, straightening his tie. "Classified communications occurring in public forums, this is precisely the lack of protocol discipline I've been warning about." The CNN producer whispered urgently to the moderator, who nodded and approached the microphone. "We're receiving information that the individual who just left, Dr. Javon Washington, is reportedly the director of the Pentagon's Strategic Intelligence Division, one of the most classified positions in our defense infrastructure." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. On the main screen behind Whitfield, CNN had already changed their chyron to read, "Breaking, Pentagon Intelligence Director publicly identified during town hall confrontation." Whitfield's face paled further. The Strategic Intelligence Division controlled the nation's most sophisticated intelligence assets and reported directly to the Joint Chiefs and the President. If Washington truly headed this division, Whitfield had just publicly insulted one of the most powerful military officials in the country. "I want to clarify," Whitfield attempted, "that my comments were directed at the policy question, not at Dr. Washington personally. National security transcends politics and we all." His words were drowned out by the sound of the helicopter taking off. The audience turned to watch through the convention center's glass doors as the aircraft rose into the night sky, banking sharply eastward toward Washington, D.C. Inside the helicopter, Javon secured his headset as the craft accelerated to maximum speed. Across from him sat General Marcus Hendricks, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who had been aboard waiting. "Hell of an entrance there, Director," Hendricks remarked dryly. "Cover's thoroughly blown." Javon nodded grimly. "Unavoidable given the circumstances. What's the situation with the Chinese fleet?" "Their carrier group made an aggressive move toward Taiwanese waters. Their new hypersonic capabilities went active 6 hours ago, exactly the system your intelligence warned us about last month." The system Senator Whitfield dismissed as theoretical when he proposed cutting our quantum detection funding, Javon noted. General Hendricks' expression hardened. I saw that committee hearing. He questioned whether certain demographics could truly grasp advanced physics concepts, said it with you sitting right there in civilian clothes. I remember, Javon replied simply. The general studied him. You maintained your cover despite his provocation. I'd have decked him. Different battles require different weapons, General. Javon's secure tablet chimed with an incoming message, a news alert from CNN. Pentagon intelligence director publicly revealed after racially charged confrontation with Senator Whitfield. The headline was accompanied by a still image showing Whitfield pointing accusingly at Javon with the caption, "Moments before learning he was addressing top Pentagon official." General Hendricks whistled low. Whitfield's finished. Questioning your credentials was bad enough, but adding that racial component. With his defense voting record, the media will crucify him. Javon said nothing, focusing instead on the classified intelligence reports streaming onto his tablet. His personal vindication was irrelevant compared to the national security crisis unfolding. Back at the town hall, Senator Whitfield's staff had huddled around him, frantically whispering damage control strategies. His campaign manager looked particularly distressed, scrolling through his phone as social media exploded with video clips of the confrontation. "Senator, we need to issue an immediate apology," his communications director urged. The racial undertones. "I made no racial comments," Whitfield snapped. "I questioned his qualifications, which is entirely appropriate given the sensitive nature." "Sir," his chief of staff interrupted, showing him her phone, "CNN is running the clip where you said 'typical of your kind' on repeat. It's already been viewed 2 million times." The senator's face flushed. "That was taken out of context. I meant academics, not." "It doesn't matter what you meant," his campaign manager cut in. "It's how it's being perceived. And right now you're being perceived as having racially insulted the man who apparently runs our most elite intelligence division, a division whose funding you've repeatedly tried to cut." The gravity of the situation was sinking in. Whitfield's political career, built over decades, was imploding in real time. His re-election campaign, previously considered secure, now faced an existential threat. On the convention center's main screen, CNN had split the display to show Whitfield at his podium alongside footage of Javon boarding the presidential helicopter. A new chyron read, Director Washington summoned by President during national security crisis after Senator's racial comments. The moderator, recognizing the town hall had irrevocably derailed, announced a 15-minute recess. As Whitfield was escorted backstage by his staff, the audience's whispers grew to a steady roar of conversation. James Turner, who had remained in the audience, found himself surrounded by reporters. "Sir, you appear to know Director Washington personally," a CNN correspondent pressed. "Can you confirm his position?" James chose his words carefully. "I've known Javon for many years. His credentials and expertise speak for themselves." Today's events merely confirmed what those of us who know him have always understood. He's one of our nation's most brilliant security minds. Did Senator Whitfield know who he was confronting? James's expression hardened. The senator demonstrated precisely why Dr. Washington normally maintains a low profile. When you judge someone based on appearance rather than substance, you miss the true measure of the person. Today, that misjudgment happened on national television. In the helicopter approaching Washington, Javon's phone rang again. The president's voice came through, this time in a private conversation. "Javon, before we get into the crisis, I want to address what happened at that town hall. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mr. President. My cover was compromised, but the mission remains unchanged." "Whitfield had no idea who you were, did he?" "No, sir, few people do by design." The president was silent for a moment. His committee votes make more sense now. He wasn't just cutting budget lines, he was specifically targeting your operations without knowing whose they were. "Operations that just detected the very threat we're now responding to," Javon noted without emotion. "The irony isn't lost on me," the president replied. "We'll discuss the political fallout later. For now, America needs your expertise more than ever." As the helicopter approached the White House, Javon gazed out at the illuminated monuments below. The secret that had defined his professional life for 15 years was now public knowledge. Everything would change, but first there was a crisis to manage. The helicopter descended toward the South Lawn, where a contingent of officials waited to escort him to the Situation Room. Whatever happened next with Senator Whitfield would have to wait. Duty came first. The White House Situation Room hummed with urgent activity as Javon strode through the reinforced doors at 8:47 p.m. 12 high-ranking military and intelligence officials surrounded the conference table, their faces illuminated by the glow of classified displays. The president stood at the head of the table, his expression grave. "Director Washington," the president acknowledged, "glad you could join us despite the unusual circumstances of your extraction." Mr. President, Javon nodded, immediately shifting to the massive tactical display dominating the wall. It showed real-time satellite imagery of the South China Sea, where Chinese naval vessels had formed an aggressive blockade formation near Taiwanese waters. Status update, Javon requested, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had earned him respect among the Joint Chiefs. Admiral Reynolds, commander of Pacific Forces, pointed to the display. Chinese carrier group Liaoning has deployed their J-15 fighters in patrol configurations. More concerning is the activation of their DFZF hypersonic platform, exactly as your intelligence predicted 3 months ago. The Secretary of Defense nodded grimly. The same platform Senator Whitfield insisted was theoretical when he proposed cutting your quantum detection funding. Speaking of the senator, the president interjected, CNN is running the town hall confrontation as their top story. His racial comments are proving particularly problematic for him. Javon dismissed the topic with a gesture. That's irrelevant to our current situation, sir. Agreed, the president replied, though the slight smile that crossed his face suggested he appreciated the irony. What are our options? For the next 40 minutes, Javon led the crisis response planning, his encyclopedic knowledge of Chinese military capabilities impressing even those who had worked with him for years. The quantum detection system his division had developed, against Whitfield's budgetary objections, had provided the crucial early warning of the hypersonic weapons activation. Meanwhile, at the CNN studios in Atlanta, producers had assembled a panel of experts to discuss the evening's shocking developments. We're getting reports that the Chinese Maritime Initiative, whatever that is, triggered this emergency, the anchor explained. But equally significant is what happened at Senator Whitfield's town hall. The screen split to show analysts alongside footage of the confrontation, now being viewed by millions worldwide. Senator Whitfield has issued a statement calling his comments misinterpreted and expressing his highest regard for Director Washington's service, the anchor continued. But social media tells a different story. The network displayed a montage of Whitfield's previous statements about diversity in military leadership, a damning collection of thinly veiled prejudice spanning years. Back in the Situation Room, Javon's secure tablet discreetly notified him of these developments, but he remained focused on the crisis. His team had developed a 3-phase de-escalation strategy that would protect Taiwan while avoiding direct military confrontation. The quantum intercept data confirms their hypersonic systems are on standby, not launch-ready, Javon explained, highlighting technical details on the display. We have a 4-hour window to implement countermeasures before they achieve full deployment capability. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs nodded in agreement. Director Washington's assessment aligns with our tactical evaluation. I recommend proceeding with his proposed response. The president surveyed the room. Any objections? When none came, he turned to Javon. Implement your strategy, Director, and when this is resolved, we should discuss Senator Whitfield's committee assignments. I believe defense might benefit from new oversight. At the convention center in West Virginia, Senator Whitfield faced a mob of reporters as his staff attempted to hustle him toward a private exit. Senator, did you know Dr. Washington's position when you questioned his credentials? Were you aware your committee votes directly targeted his division's funding? Do you regret your typical-of-your-kind comment now that you know who he is? Whitfield's face had gone from pale to mottled red. My comments were about qualifications, not race. I stand by my budgetary priorities, which are based on strategic necessity, not personal. His statement was interrupted by breaking news alerts, blaring from every reporter's phone simultaneously. CNN had obtained information that the hypersonic detection system, the very system Whitfield had tried to defund, had just prevented a potential military escalation in Asia. The senator's expression crumbled as he realized the magnitude of what was unfolding. His political instincts, honed over decades, recognized an inescapable truth. He had publicly insulted and racially demeaned the man who was, at this very moment, protecting American interests with technology Whitfield had dismissed as unnecessary. As his security detail finally managed to extract him through a service entrance, Whitfield's phone buzzed with a message from the Senate Majority Leader. Emergency caucus meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Committee reassignments to be discussed. The political earthquake had only just begun. In the chaotic hours following the town hall incident, Senator Whitfield barricaded himself in his Georgetown townhouse. Outside, news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Inside, the senator paced his study, phone pressed to his ear as his chief strategist delivered the devastating news. The Senate Ethics Committee is convening tomorrow morning, his strategist explained. Citing your comments as potentially violating Senate conduct rules, the racial component is especially problematic given your position on the Defense Committee. This is absurd, Whitfield exploded. I've served in the Senate for 18 years. One misinterpreted comment can't undo that. It's not just one comment, Senator. CNN has compiled a 7-minute montage of your previous statements questioning minority appointments in defense positions. Paired with today's confrontation, it's damaging. On Whitfield's muted television, cable news networks displayed split-screen coverage, one side showing the evolving Chinese maritime situation, the other replaying the town hall confrontation on continuous loop. The hashtag #Whitfield racism was trending at #1 worldwide. What about my defense committee chairmanship? Whitfield asked, dreading the answer. The silence on the other end spoke volumes before his strategist finally responded. The majority leader has already indicated your position is under review. Several committee members have publicly called for your removal. Whitfield collapsed into his leather chair, the political reality crashing down around him. 18 years of careful positioning, destroyed in a single evening by an encounter with a man whose power he hadn't recognized. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, the crisis had been contained. Javon's quantum detection system had provided the precise intelligence needed to neutralize the threat without military escalation. As the situation stabilized, he finally had a moment to process the personal implications of what had transpired. General Hendricks approached as Javon was gathering his materials. "The president wants you at tomorrow's press briefing." Javon looked up sharply. "I don't do press, General. My position requires anonymity." "That ship has sailed, Director," Hendricks replied. "Your identity is national news now. The president believes your presence will reassure the public about our intelligence capabilities, especially in light of Senator Whitfield's attempts to undermine them." Before Javon could respond, his secure line rang. It was James Turner. "You might want to turn on CNN," James said without preamble. "Whitfield's primary opponent just released polling numbers showing a 30-point swing against him. Your town hall confrontation has effectively ended his re-election campaign." Javon sighed. "That wasn't my intention, James." "Maybe not, but it's poetic justice. The man spent years trying to defund the very programs that just prevented an international crisis. And he did it while questioning the capabilities of people who look like you." On the morning news shows, political analysts dissected every angle of the previous night's events. The senator's racial comment had become the focal point of a broader conversation about prejudice in positions of power. "What makes this particularly significant," noted one commentator, "is that Senator Whitfield wasn't just expressing personal bias. He was actively working to cut funding for programs led by people he clearly held prejudiced views against. That's not just racism, it's racism with policy consequences." By 7 a.m., Whitfield's communications director had resigned. By 8 a.m., 3 major donors had publicly withdrawn support from his campaign. By 9 a.m., the White House announced a special press briefing to discuss the South China Sea situation, with Director Javon Washington scheduled to participate. At the Capitol, the Senate Ethics Committee convened in emergency session. Senator Alina Maxwell, the committee chairwoman, reviewed the evidence with her colleagues. "The combination of Senator Whitfield's public comments and his voting record reveals a disturbing pattern," she noted. "Particularly troubling is the revelation that his targeted budget cuts consistently affected divisions led by minority officials." A junior senator raised his hand. "Is there precedent for removing someone from a committee chairmanship mid-session?" "There is," Maxwell confirmed, "and given the security implications of his actions, I believe we have no choice but to recommend his immediate removal." As the committee deliberated, Senator Whitfield received a call from the Senate Majority Leader. "Tom, I'm giving you one opportunity to resign your chairmanship voluntarily," the leader said without preamble. "Otherwise, the vote happens this afternoon and you won't like the outcome." "This is a political lynching," Whitfield protested, immediately regretting his poor choice of words. "That's exactly the kind of rhetoric that got you here," the leader replied coldly. "Your decision, Tom, dignity or disgrace." As Whitfield contemplated his rapidly narrowing options, Javon Washington stood before the mirror in his Pentagon office adjusting his tie. After 15 years in the shadows, he was about to step into the spotlight, not by choice but by necessity. His phone chimed with a message from the president. "The Senate Defense Committee will have a new chairman by day's end. Your funding is secure, justice works in mysterious ways." Javon studied his reflection, thinking about the long path that had led him here. The childhood in Baltimore where he'd been told people like him couldn't understand complex science. The MIT classrooms where he'd been mistaken for janitorial staff. The Pentagon meetings where his expertise was questioned despite his credentials. Now, in a twist of fate neither he nor Senator Whitfield could have predicted, a moment of blatant prejudice had exposed not just a man's bias, but a system that had enabled it for far too long. The White House press room buzzed with anticipation as journalists from every major news outlet packed the seats. This wasn't the typical press briefing, not with Director Javon Washington scheduled to make his first public appearance since the town hall confrontation that had exploded across the nation's consciousness. At precisely 10 a.m., the press secretary approached the podium. "Good morning. Today we're joined by Dr. Javon Washington, Director of the Pentagon's Strategic Intelligence Division, to discuss last night's successful diplomatic resolution in the South China Sea and the intelligence capabilities that made it possible." Camera shutters clicked frantically as Javon walked confidently to the podium, his military bearing evident in every step. Unlike the civilian clothes he'd worn at the town hall, today he appeared in his official capacity, the full decorations on his uniform telling the story of a distinguished career that Senator Whitfield had so casually dismissed. "Thank you," Javon began, his deep voice carrying easily through the room. "Last night, our quantum detection systems identified and tracked the activation of hypersonic weapons platforms in the South China Sea. Thanks to early detection, we were able to implement diplomatic countermeasures that successfully de-escalated the situation without military confrontation." A reporter raised her hand. "Director Washington, these are the same detection systems Senator Whitfield attempted to defund, correct?" Javon maintained his professional composure. "I don't comment on specific budget deliberations. What I can confirm is that these technologies proved essential to national security, as our intelligence assessments had predicted." His diplomatic response didn't deter the press corps. "Sir, how do you respond to Senator Whitfield's statement this morning that he's been unfairly characterized, and that his committee decisions were based solely on strategic priorities, not personal bias?" Before Javon could answer, breaking news alerts buzzed across the room. The Senate Ethics Committee had voted 11-2 to remove Senator Whitfield from his chairmanship of the Defense Committee, effective immediately. The press secretary leaned into her microphone. "We've just received confirmation of the Ethics Committee vote. The president will release a statement shortly, but wishes to emphasize that committee assignments are congressional matters." Across town, Senator Whitfield sat alone in his office, watching the press conference on a small television. His phone had been ringing constantly, calls from donors withdrawing support, colleagues distancing themselves, and reporters seeking comment. His chief of staff had tendered her resignation hours earlier. On screen, Javon continued answering questions with measured precision, his expertise obvious to anyone watching. The contrast between the reality of who Javon was and how Whitfield had characterized him couldn't have been starker. A knock at his door interrupted Whitfield's misery. His remaining assistant entered cautiously. "Senator, your primary opponent has scheduled a press conference for noon. Early polling shows you trailing by 22 points. Whitfield nodded numbly. 18 years in the Senate ended by a single encounter with a man whose intelligence he dismissed based on nothing but prejudice. Back at the White House, the press briefing was wrapping up. A final question came from the back of the room. "Director Washington, do you believe Senator Whitfield's treatment of you was racially motivated?" The room fell silent. Javon paused, considering his words carefully. "Throughout my career, I've encountered individuals who made assumptions about my capabilities based on appearance rather than credentials. What makes this situation unique isn't the bias itself, it's that it happened on national television, and it involved decisions affecting national security. The American people saw in real time how prejudice can impact policy." He continued, his voice measured but resolute. "The systems Senator Whitfield attempted to defund just prevented a potential international crisis. That reality speaks for itself. As for his motivations, I believe the Ethics Committee has rendered their verdict." The press corps erupted in questions, but Javon had said all he intended to say. He stepped away from the podium with the same quiet dignity he'd maintained throughout the crisis. That evening, as Javon finally returned to his Georgetown townhouse, he found James waiting on his front steps. "Quite a day," James remarked as Javon approached. "Whitfield's announced he won't seek re-election." Javon nodded, unlocking his door. "Political survival instinct. His internal polling must be catastrophic." Inside, James opened 2 beers and handed one to his friend. "You know, when we were at MIT together, I never imagined you'd end up running Pentagon intelligence, though I always knew you were the smartest person in any room." Including the room where Senator Whitfield questioned whether people like me could grasp advanced physics, Javon allowed himself a rare smile. "Especially that room," James replied, raising his bottle in a toast. "To justice served." As they settled into Javon's living room, CNN played footage of Senator Whitfield's hasty exit from the Capitol, reporters shouting questions he refused to answer. The chyron read, "Senate Ethics Committee, Whitfield's conduct unbecoming of leadership position." Javon's phone rang the president again. "Director Washington," the president said when Javon answered, I wanted to inform you personally that your division's funding has been not only restored but increased by congressional leadership. Apparently demonstrating the value of quantum detection systems in real time made quite an impression. Thank you, Mr. President. The team will put those resources to good use. I have no doubt, the President replied. One more thing, the new Defense Committee chair would like to meet with you tomorrow. Senator Maxwell has some ideas about expanding minority recruitment in intelligence services. After the call ended, James raised an eyebrow. So in less than 48 hours, you've gone from being targeted by a racist senator to having your budget increased by his replacement. That's what I call a reversal of fortune. Javon gazed out his window at the Washington Monument illuminated against the night sky. It's not about me, James. It's about ensuring our intelligence capabilities aren't compromised by personal bias. The American people deserve better. The American people got better, James replied. They got you. As night fell over Washington, Senator Whitfield sat alone in his darkened study, watching his political legacy disintegrate on every news channel. Meanwhile, across town, Director Javon Washington reviewed intelligence reports, his team's morale higher than ever, their funding secure and their mission clear. Justice, it seemed, had been served, not through confrontation or retaliation, but through the simple power of truth revealed at precisely the right moment.